Well, howdy there, Internet people. It's Bo again. So, today we are going to talk about President Biden's first veto. Recently, in a video, I mentioned a piece of legislation and said it was potentially his first veto. It's his first veto. He vetoed it. And if you want to know more about what the legislation does exactly, I'll have the video down below. But it was expected that he would veto it. Short version of what it does is that the Republican Party wanted to limit financial managers in what factors they could consider when it comes to ESG scores and stuff about climate change and social considerations and stuff like that. As far as the Republican Party concerned, profit was all. That's what they should be looking at. They shouldn't look at the other stuff. And the legislation would have prohibited them from looking at other stuff. Biden said no. The veto was pretty expected. I imagine the Republican Party expected it as well. But it's also a signal. It's a reminder to those in the House in particular that President Biden does have a veto pen and he will use it. It was unlikely in any event that he would sign this, but him actually using that veto power kind of sets the stage for future battles with the Republican Party, particularly those in the House. And we can kind of start to see the lines form and where they're going to be. We see who in the Senate on the Democratic side of the aisle might be willing to reach across. It's the usual suspects. Manchin or other people who may be vulnerable coming up to re-election. But we're also reminded that it's unlikely that Republicans in Congress are going to get the votes to override a veto. Generally, once the first veto gets used, more follow. And most times it's a show for the party that is not really in power, the opposing party to the president. It's a show for their base. They send up legislation they know has no chance of getting signed. It's going to be harder for them to do that given the situation in the Senate. But it's not impossible. So we may start to see more legislation move forward from the Republican Party that in many cases might be really unnerving because it may get passed in some cases. But Biden would veto it, and they don't have the votes to override it. So beyond the news of the legislation being vetoed, which was expected, there's kind of the warning that you may see some incredibly extreme legislation move forward, but it really doesn't stand a chance of actually becoming law. And that's something that people need to keep in mind if Republicans in the House start pushing for some pretty extreme measures. Just as it moves, remember, as long as Biden has the veto pen, it's unlikely that they'll be able to get anything really wild through because they're not going to get the votes to override his veto. Anyway, it's just a thought. Y'all have a good day.